Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. He is the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, what did you make of the president's comparison that the war is like two children fighting and need to work out their differences?
Well, the president's ignorance of this situation is staggering. It continues to astound with the way he says things, and also incredibly costly, because it's really very clear what's going on here. Putin wants control of Ukraine. And, he's not going to stop until one of two things happens. Either A, he gets control of Ukraine, or B, it is made clear to him that he can't achieve that objective, which is why it is so important for the president to state that clearly. This is not some spat between two equal rivals who have just a difference of opinion. This is a concerted effort by Putin to try to grab territory. He basically wants to reestablish the Soviet Union. And to stop him, we need to support Ukraine. We need to be clear in that support. The message that President Trump and J.D. Vance and others in the administration have sent, which basically is we're going to abandon Ukraine at some point, that is empowering Putin. Look, Ukraine has fought incredibly bravely. We put together a great coalition to help them. We can stop Putin, but not if the president keeps pulling the rug out from under Ukraine.
So to talk about that tactic of pulling the rug from out underneath Volodymyr Zelensky, every couple of days when things go sour for the way the president views Vladimir Putin, he'll either tweet about it or he'll say, I'm shocked at the way Vladimir Putin is behaving. And for most of us in the media and in the real world who have seen Vladimir Putin for the last 20 years, it's not a surprise that Vladimir Putin is showing us who he really is. Yet somehow the president of the United States always acts surprised that Vladimir Putin is turning out to be a bad guy.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There's nothing really terribly complicated. I explained it in the answer to the first question. That's what's going on. I mean, we have to calculate what our interests are in that fight. I think our interests are clear. If Russia and Putin are able to, by military force, take territory and expand their power, that's a bad thing for the world, and we should try and stop it. But President Trump has no real interest in the background here, and it is costing us dearly. We have a very good coalition supporting Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting incredibly well. We can get to peace if we show resolve in supporting Ukraine. The president, there's a whole bunch of different factors in why he's messing this up. Let us not underestimate what I said up front. The president is remarkably ignorant of things that don't immediately, suit his ego. So he may not know what's going on there. And then you've got the people who are sympathetic to Putin within the Republican Party. And then you've got the vague notion that, well, we should try to get out of conflicts all around the world, which I don't disagree with. But we're not actually in this conflict. We're trying to prevent a situation where more countries get drawn into it by supporting Ukraine and defending themselves. So, yeah, the president's national security approach is incredibly dangerous for the world and for our country.
Congressman, you alluded to a lot of Republicans in Congress being sympathetic to Putin. There have also been a number of aides within the White House who have been hostile, outwardly hostile to Zelensky. Could you talk a little bit more about how much influence that support may be having or not having on President Trump? And if you have any theories about why there is this strange set of bedfellows right now?
Yeah, first of all, let me make clear, there is a substantial number of Republicans in the House and the Senate who support Ukraine, and they are strong on that. Mike Rogers, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, my counterpart, very strong supporter of Ukraine, a number of others as well. But then you've got this weird strain within the Republican Party that is sympathetic to Putin as sort of a white Christian nationalist, as he's portrayed himself. Putin, he does a lot of bizarre propaganda about being anti-woke. And then you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are sympathetic to that. How large is that in the Republican Party? I don't know, but it's obviously present. Liz Cheney put it best as the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party. And I will say this, however large it is, they have a disproportionate level of influence within Trump's MAGA movement. And that is hurting our ability to get to the right policy, even while you have national security leaders in the House and the Senate who agree with everything that we're saying here. They're just not the ones driving the ship at the White House right now, and that's a big problem.
Congressman, next weekend on Saturday, Donald Trump is going to host a real boondoggle of a parade that cost about $40 million, celebrating the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, which I think we can all agree that's reason to celebrate. But is there any talk of also doing this for the Marine Corps or for the Navy, who also have their 250th anniversary coming up? Or is the cost, and is the cost just not an issue or consideration for this administration?
Well, it's the Marine Corps' fault for not sharing a birthday with Donald Trump. I think that's the reason the Army is getting more of the celebration here. And I don't think it's any particular insight on my part to point that out. Look, Trump can dress this up any way he wants. And I know Republican colleagues of mine in the House are defending it. Well, the military does parades all the time, and it's not a big deal. They don't do parades that cost, and by the way, the figure I heard was $45 million. They don't do parades that cost $45 million, are going to tear up the streets in downtown D.C. and just happen to coincide with President Trump's birthday, while President Trump has actively said he admires leaders like Kim Jong-un and Putin because they get these big, huge parades celebrating them. This is a bad look for our government. It is about Trump. It is about moving towards a more autocratic approach to governing. Tip of the iceberg, by the way, the parade. You guys have documented, the disappearing of people off the streets, the way he has weaponized the Justice Department, gone after law firms, gone after the media, all in an autocratic way that is completely against the values of this country. I'm not going to pretend that a parade is somehow the worst thing going on here, but it fits the theme. We are supposed to praise the dear leader as opposed to upholding the law, the Constitution, and recognizing that that's what this nation is about, not about a cult of personality. Make no mistake about it. He's doing this parade so that people can kiss up to him.
So to that point, really quickly, Congressman, I'm reluctant to ever ask a politician to comment on what the media should do, but what do you think journalists and media organizations should do next Saturday? Should they cover this parade that this president, as you described, is cloaking himself in to make it about him and to kind of have a dear leader moment and give him that imagery that he wants? Or what do you think the media should do?
I don't think they should do that. I think they should make the points that I've made and point out exactly what this is about. But you're right. I can't dictate to the media how to cover things. But look, Trump's going after the media too. I mean, this is all part of the effort, that the point, whether you're talking about Harvard, whether you're talking about the media, whether you're talking about the law firms, just acquiescing to Trump's demands just walks us down the road of the autocracy that he wants to create. I think if you believe in representative democracy and freedom, you should fight back against that, whoever you are.